certainly demonstrates the ambitions and potential trajectory of China's interests in the Pacific. But we also need to keep in mind that this communique is a draft communique. China has circulated it in order to then present it at the upcoming China Pacific Islands Foreign Ministers meeting on May 30th. With the expectation, I'm sure, that it would be adopted, but there has certainly been some pushback and resistance to it. So it's certainly by no means a fait accompli.
So the sort of combination of the various factors that have been pulled into this communique are quite interesting. Economic, security, police. It just, as you point out, gives us a sense of how China wants to position itself in the region.
Oh, absolutely. And it is certainly a laundry list of economic trade, investment, maritime access to fisheries, as well as a security cooperation component and the data network governance and customs and cybersecurity element to it as well. So what it does tell us is that China is seeking a multilateral approach to the Pacific, whereas previously it was more comfortable with a bilateral approach. That doesn't mean to say it's going to stop engaging bilaterally, but certainly this demonstrates a greater confidence on China's part to engage with the region as a whole and to try and implement a number of mechanisms, such as a Pacific Free Trade zone, as well as multilateral police training. And that's probably the major sticking point for Australia and New Zealand, and strong concerns that would undermine and cut across existing regional security architecture. Australia and New Zealand have both had extensive involvement in policing in the region for many years, as well as crisis management. And so there are certainly concerns that China is seeking to shape the regional order effectively in its favour.
You talk about pushback, and potentially we're seeing a little bit of that starting, but how difficult is it for some of these Pacific countries to push back on a deal like this, given there's been so much economic investment from China?
Well, that obviously is a concern. You're right. And certainly both Australia and New Zealand have spoken publicly about their concerns about the level of economic coercion that could potentially undermine the sovereignty of certain Pacific states. And so that aligning of economic cooperation with security cooperation creates something of a dilemma for those Pacific states who might be hoping to secure some economic deals out of Chinese Foreign Minister Wang's tour of the Pacific. And that creates something of a dilemma for them when they may need to balance that very carefully with what China may be seeking in terms of security cooperation.
And in terms
but that's not to say, though...
Sorry, in terms of their own sovereignty as well, because a shopping list like this to any other nation would be roundly rejected, you would think.
Oh, look, I have no doubt that there is a lot of deep thinking taking place in the region right now. Pacific Island countries are acutely protective of their sovereignty, and they are very understandably also concerned about strategic competition in the region and being caught in the middle and being treated as pawns on this stage. So yes, Pacific countries, are very, very conscious of exercising their sovereign rights but protecting their sovereignty as well. And we very well may see, as China may learn, that there are limits to external actors seeking to influence Pacific countries.
There's a new Australian government. The Foreign Minister has already made her way to Fiji, making it clear Australia has heard the concerns around climate change. Do you think you know, Australia is too late, New Zealand too. Have we not noticed exactly the extent of China's plans here?
Well, I think that, I mean, that's certainly been a criticism that's been levelled at Canberra and Wellington over the past few months, certainly since the Solomon Islands China security agreement came out into the public several months ago. So, but I think also we need to be cautious about that because there are limits also to Australian and New Zealand influence in the region. Pacific countries are seeking to engage with partners, a range of different partners, in order to meet their economic and development needs. And China has, for well over a decade, has provided and sought to meet those needs, particularly in the infrastructure space. Where we need to do better, and Senator Wong spoke to this in Fiji this afternoon, is listening to the region and building relationships, genuine partnerships with the region, so that when issues do arise, countries feel comfortable reaching back to Canberra and to Wellington to discuss their concerns about deals like this.
One of the key parts of this is the data, the telecommunications cooperation. I mean, when we've seen how China has monitored its own citizens and clamped down on its own citizens, how much of a red flag is that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's an enormous concern that data could be collected on both citizens across the Pacific as well as those travelling in and out of the region. And that is something that clearly is of significant concern to those countries because it cuts right to the chase with respect to their national security. And it's obviously a concern for Australia and New Zealand as well.
Good to talk, Anna. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.